Hi, everybody. Welcome back to The Reason We Learn. I'm Deb Philman, mom, homeschooler, educator. So, if you've been following my channel at all, you already know I am a huge proponent of school choice. I actually would go so far as to say we need to get rid of the public schools altogether. I think there's no fixing them from within. I think we need to just abandon them, walk away. I actually have an early video that wasn't really intended for YouTube, but was shared privately, and then I decided, what the heck, I'm going to put it on my YouTube channel, and I say exactly that based on some of my own personal experiences as a teacher, as a mom, etc., that I think we need a walk away movement from schools. I think parents need to just abandon it, just leave. There are other options, and if we do that, then we'll have better education for our kids across the board. I believe that 100%. In the meantime, I support charters as one option. I don't think they're a panacea, but I don't see any good argument against them in terms of rights. I mean, any rights respecting person has to support charter schools. You should have a choice. The dollars should follow the child. You shouldn't be conscripted to one particular school or one particular system. And the fact that the public schools and the public school unions are so opposed to charter schools, to me, is all the evidence you need that they're threatened. They're threatened by the competition. Now, why would they be? Well, their schools are underperforming. Their schools are failing. And they know, because they've already seen evidence of it, that when the kids leave and go to charter schools, even if the school as a whole doesn't, quote, do better on tests, there are a lot of ways to measure better on a case-by-case basis. Parents know this, and that is why they overwhelmingly continue to choose the charter schools, regardless of what test scores are showing. Their kids are happier, better adjusted, learning more, growing, thriving, etc. And we send our kids to school for more than getting a good test score. I obviously want them to be proficient in reading and math, but there are other ways to measure that. So I think this whole, they're not even doing better is not an argument. It's certainly not an argument against your right to educate your child the way you see fit. So, having said all that and laying it out that I am pro school choice, I want to share with you something that came up in the last couple of days with the creator of the 1619 Project. Now, I've covered that on this channel. I have nothing good to say about it, or its creator for that matter, Nikole-Hannah Jones. I think she has done a tremendous amount of damage to our educational system, especially with regard to history, especially with regard to history of this nation and our founding documents. And I think she continues to do damage. So every time I see people who know better take her on, I'm happy. And I want to amplify that. And that's what this video is for my audience. This is my amplification. So here we have the Daily Wire article about it. 1619 Project creator says school choice arose to stymie integration and gets history lessons. Oh, did she ever? So on Friday, 1619 Project creator Nikole-Hannah Jones initiated an exchange in which she mocked someone for pointing out that the complaints she had about disadvantages children of color faced in their school systems could be addressed by offering all students freedom of school choice. Hannah Jones's version of American history in the 1619 Project has been roundly criticized by noted historians, that's an understatement, responded. School choice literally came about to stymie integration, but nice try. That's how she talks, by the way. She's incapable of civility. That prompted those who know about American history, in other words, anyone but her, to push back, slamming Hannah Jones' remark as historically inaccurate, because it is. Hannah Jones precipitated the exchange by tweeting, now, I've tried to read this multiple times. It doesn't make sense. And here it is in the original, so you know that Daily Wire didn't get it wrong. All you have to do is talk about is integrating schools to see the truth about how poorly people of every political stripe think of Black children. Now, that's quite a statement. It's quite a statement. So I can't understand the first part of the statement, but let's focus on the second part. People of every political stripe think of how poorly everybody thinks of Black children. Throughout this whole thread, by the way, I see no evidence to support her statement. She offers none. But she certainly fires a shot off the bow about how people of every political stripe think poorly of Black children. That's astounding to me. Every person I know fighting for school choice thinks the exact opposite, thinks it's a colossal waste of human capital that children of every race, just children, period, American children, that their parents shouldn't be allowed to choose the best education for them. Every person of every political stripe who supports school choice thinks extremely highly of Black children and knows that we are wasting their talent, keeping them, coercively in public schools. So let's go back to where we were. I think I will never get over, and this is in a tweet here. She says, I think I will never get over how disdainfully people talk about 10, 11-year-old children as lacking talent and gifts and being undeserving of the same educations they absolutely demand for their own children. Again, I don't know where she's getting that. Who ever says that? Who is she hearing talk this way? I really want to know who she's hearing talk this way. She loves to do this. She says what people think and what people say, and I hear this and I hear that, but you never get any evidence of it. How we think their academic fates should be determined by the 5th grade, she continued. Go to Europe, they do that there. Our society ensures, this kills me. Our society ensures, certain children live in segregated, struggling neighborhoods that they are born into disadvantage. Then we send them to schools that reinforce that disadvantage. And then we say, because they are disadvantaged, they deserve to remain so. Who is we? And who is society? And who is doing this? And how is that being ensured? And can we just take a moment to talk about the fact that these are government schools and she's against school choice, but we send them to schools that reinforce disadvantage. And what you're saying is you want them to stay in those schools. So you think the schools reinforce a disadvantage. You think society ensures they live in these terrible neighborhoods. And when people come along and say, well, let's give them a better choice. Let's give them options to these schools that keep them in disadvantage and ensure that they remain in these struggling neighborhoods. She says, no, that's racist. Yeah, okay. This is incoherent, but whatever. This is her. This is Nikole-Hannah Jones. I cannot stress this enough. If your kids are learning 1619 Project, their time is being wasted. Their brains are being washed. You need to get them out of that school. Any school that would decide to use this in any capacity, even for an art project, is not worth your child's time. So this is why I fight for school choice for you. Also, I would advocate homeschooling, but I realize not everyone feels they can do that. So let's continue. So then the person came along and responded school choice would help fix that. Because it would, as I just explained. Okay. And then she made her comment about how school choice, not sure how this is a retort to what they said. School choice would fix that. And she's going back to how it came about. Even if she were right, so what? So what if it came about that way? We are now in 2020. School segregation hasn't been a thing since the 60s, early 60s at that. So, plenty of things came about, like a marriage license, for example, came about because of racism. That's literally why there is such a thing as a marriage license. Well, do we still get a marriage license because of racism? No, we don't. Now, I have big problems with marriage licenses. That's a whole other video, but we don't look at how something came about and then say, and it's still the case today because of how it came about. It's a fallacy. It's just a fallacy. So, Hannah Jones' assertion elicited others, including Corey DeAngelis, director of school choice at Reason Foundation, to offer her some facts about charter schools and voucher programs. Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire all have voucher programs that started in the 1800s. Some segregationists opposed school vouchers because they understood that funding students directly could expand educational opportunities and lead to integration. And why is that? Because you give a child a voucher to go to the school of their choice. They're going to show up to a school irrespective of what the race of the people there might be. They're not stuck in their neighborhood like she described, which might be or might have been at least, situationally segregated in the sense that they were of a lower socioeconomic status as far back as you can go and haven't been able to get out of that for a variety of reasons or whatever. It seems to me that's more segregationist, keeping them in the school that they're zoned for, or worse, trying to arbitrarily bus them clear across town to a school they wouldn't necessarily choose just because they'll get to sit next to white people. And it might not suit their needs. And I can assure you sitting on a bus for 45 minutes to each way every day isn't likely to suit their needs. So you might as well, if they have to travel, let them travel to a school they want to go to. This seems to make sense. And again, it's a rights respecting thing. Why would you, if you are concerned about civil rights, why would you deny the parents their civil rights? This makes no sense. She is a walking contradiction. Everything out of her mouth is either incoherent or contradicts itself. So Continuing, the evidence also suggests today's private school voucher programs generally lead to integration. It's very obvious. Okay. Phil Magness also sets the record straight in the history of school choice and school choice myths. Great book. I highly recommend it. If you're interested in school choice and you want to be able to defend it effectively, you need to read this book because he lays out and debunks all the myths. They abound. I'm not going to go into them here. Buy the book. He's a senior research fellow. I've covered him on this channel before at the American Institute for Economic Research. And so he corrected the record in 2018. This was an exchange with Carolina Journal Radio. So this wasn't in the Twitter storm, but this lays it out. Carolina Journal Radio. So this really is something that you hear sometimes from people who oppose vouchers or school choice in general. Wait a minute. You look back to the 50s and 60s and all this started from people who wanted to fight the ruling in Brown v. Board of Education. Are they correct? Magness. Right. So the issue is much more complicated than that. Vouchers do emerge simultaneously with an upheaval in the school system that takes place in the 50s and 60s, and integration is part of that. But there are also religious movements that are trying to seek alternatives to public education. But the big story here is the free market side, and that's Milton Friedman, who's kind of the father of the modern voucher movement. So he writes an article in 1955 that sketches out the theory behind vouchers, why competition in school works, and there's a footnote in the article that's often overlooked by the people who make this argument. Friedman is explicit that he's an integrationist, that he's a supporter of integrating the schools, and he actually sees vouchers as a means to undermine and defeat work around segregation, and he even goes on record and says if the choice were only between forced segregation, which is basically the status quo that they had, and using government tools to mandate integration, he would be unequivocally in the latter category. But he sees vouchers as a better mechanism to bring that about. So basically, Friedman in his article stands entirely against this narrative that we've heard about. Magness. Entirely. Yep. And so then there's the video. So she got a little education about it, but of course rejected it. Great stuff on Twitter from them and schooling her. So this was a lot of fun because I love to see Nikole-Hannah Jones get schooled by the experts because she's not one. She's a grifter, and you need to get your kids out of classes using her curriculum. So that's what I wanted to say. And that's it. That's the video. If you like this video, I hope you will comment, share, subscribe. That's the video.